Our next little segment is floral jewelry. And so we want to talk about rings, necklaces, headbands, accessories for your shoes, and things like that. I don't know if many of you have traveled to the South, but that's where I come from, and there's a few things the women usually have big hair. Check. Yeah. They carry big purses. Yeah. And and they love to wear big jewelry. So that's little traits of the Southern ladies. And so in my area, it's super easy for me to sell things like these little floral rings for different things. I do a lot of garden club lectures, and any women's group that you have, they're real economical, and they're super easy to do. And you can almost use little remnants, what gets tucked in that little drawer and stashed in the little closet and things like that, to make these. So they love them. So it's a great idea to market to them as well. As far as prom goes, they start with the dress, and they move into their accessories, shoes. We have some more shoes coming up later, but I told you I was going to show you a couple of ways that we can use the brooches. This is a great way, because some shoes are just flat and plain to add the detail to. These have the little bows on the top, so the clips don't work as well, but to add that little bit of bling is the brooch that they can keep afterwards. And so, as Sarah said, multiple use, multiple wear, however you want to sell it to them. It definitely is it's all in your language and your lingo to your target market. But this is also a use for the brooch. So like I said, these, I think they come two to a package, these rings. And so I just used the flange that comes on them. They come wrapped with that ribbon, so you want to knot it again. And then I just added a little lamb's ear and the brooch on top. Now this brooch, I did I glue this one on? Pin it on. I think I glued this one on, but you could definitely pin it right through the bottom of that of the ribbon on there. And I've used a lot of lamb's ear in a lot of these designs because that's what we see in our magazines. That's what they see in all these books that they look at. But it's so finicky when it's fresh. It wants to wilt very, very easily. This or Dusty Miller. Sometimes I will, if I'm using fresh, I use the permanent a lot. But if I'm using fresh, I will take one of the corsage leaves, like the Milton Adler corsage leaves, and I will put a little bit of the cold glue on there, and then I will glue lamb's ear to the top of one of those leaves. So it has the support on the back, and it also has that longer stem, which you can make more boutonnieres and things like that with. So that's a good little tip for you to carry back. But these rings are just fun. They definitely make a statement. That was just the brooch. This one was a little remnant of those pearls that y'all know I love. And I added in one of the little fit sleeves. And then they have these little guys. And you can add them to anything. They already have like a little sticky backing on them. So you can definitely stick them to anything. And if you notice, as you get a little closer, I just do them in a little pattern. You can do them haphazard if you want to, but just to line the outside of that one leaf just kind of draws your eye in and gives it a little more style appeal than if you just polka dotted it all over the leaf. So when you do that, pay attention to those little details. I talked a little earlier, I brought this out when we were talking about boutonnieres. But there's also these different accessories. And like this is very stylish. It doesn't have to be just for the guys. You know, you have older women who need corsages, things like that. So don't ever forget about the bling, especially for the ladies. And then this is one of the Fitz necklaces. And all the necklaces is a little choker style, but it comes with that flange again that you can glue to. Or they have holes if you need to stick some wire through there, of course. Be sure about how it feels on the person's neck. I always remember that. A lot of times, if I have anything rough on the back, I'll either glue like a permanent leaf like this on the back, or have little pieces of felt, little squares of felt that I'll glue on the back side. So when it rests on their neck, it doesn't scratch or anything like that. I'm always trying to incorporate different things, think a little outside the box. And this was in my goodie pile yesterday. And it's just a snowflake garland. I have no idea if you even have it anymore.
We do. It's called snowcat. It's a ribbon. It's technically a ribbon.
It's a ribbon. Okay.
It's called snowcat.
And so I was looking at it, and of course being inspired by what's outside, because it's so different than where I come from, I just took these and cut them apart. to make little individual snowflakes. And so I took the flange that was on the necklace and just started by gluing a couple of them together to kind of create the pendant that comes down. And then I added a few of the little rhinestone dots here. And then you can see I carried that same technique with that lamb's ear to kind of make it all uniform. So if you want to sell a collection or put a collection out, you can definitely show how pieces coordinate together. These little, you can see I put the snowflake in the little corsage or the little boutonniere. Just to kind of pull it home, you can always cut a couple of these little pieces off. To me, when it comes to especially working with small things like this, it definitely is the attention to the detail because it is so small. You know, I can make grand arrangements, but the detail in this is just as important, and that's what you can charge a little more for. But you can see how you could just cut a little piece of the snowflake and just add it right onto the lamb's ear, just to kind of make it all coordinate together. So you can dress them up, dress them down as much as you want to. The things you can't ever have enough of, they come in a lot of different colors, so you can stick them on anything. Your iPhone, anything you do. You might have the little girls being like, can I buy some of those just for this? Headbands are super popular, and we do some a lot in weddings for little girls, little flower girls, things like that. Or you can get a little more blingy with prom. But you can see I exaggerated this just a little bit because if you look in the marketplace on the trend, you see all these floral crowns. And you've probably seen some that have huge flowers on the crowns. And as a floral designer who works in it every day, it makes me a little nervous when they have those big, you know, like a regular size rose, big cabbage rose compared to a little spray rose. So I always like to start with a grid, whether it's wire or whether you even start with, if it's a crown, you could even start with one of these tiaras. If you have a girl who loves the bling as well, you can just accent some of those flowers so this still shines through. So you don't want to necessarily hide it, but you want to work smarter and not harder, because the time it takes you to make those, to tape all the wire and make it thick enough to where it's going to sit, you can just pull this out of the handy dandy little packaging and just attach to it. So make sure that you always think about how you can work smarter and not harder. So just that little tiara inspiration for you. But the headband, they have these great orchids here at Pioneer, and this is actually 2 of those orchid stems. I think you said they were 69 cents a piece,
Yes,
which
5 flowers.
is awesome. So good. I covered my mechanics a little bit so you can't really see, but I wired the first piece on. So I used 1 stem full and it went down, and then I came back and cut the second piece apart and glued in a couple of the larger orchids inside to cover up the mechanics a little bit. And I wanted it to balance out, so you don't necessarily have to have that, but I think that kind of makes the weight shift to where it looks very balanced. So even though you're doing small things and they have lots of detail, you still need to remember your principles and elements of design, your visual balance, your weight, your color coordination, all those type things play into every arrangement that you do. So again, you can see this fuzzy lamb's ear, which is a great deal. It comes a lot of leaves on the stem. I just glued it right onto the back so it won't catch in their hair or anything like that. As a girl with curly hair and lots of it, I sure don't like the things get caught in it. So always make sure that you take care and you think it through for your clients and your customers, because that's what they expect. If they had a bad experience, that's what they remember, that it pulled their little girl's hair or things like that. So always pay attention to those type details. Any questions about those? No? Pretty good? Do y'all sell a lot of these rhinestone headbands or necklaces? No?
No.
When you did the necklace for one of your big events, did you use that kind of a choker necklace for your friend, or you?
I did not. Back then, this wasn't on the market yet. I used the Mega Oasis wire, the Mega Bead wire. It has like the pearls on it, and I wrapped it around itself a couple of times to make my base,
Okay.
and then I added into it.
Okay.
So,
Wow. Very clever.
yeah. So, but that's definitely a much easier way
And
if
it
that's
comes-
the style.
Comes with a little flange.
It does. And remember, before you tie that double knot in there, you can slide it around.
Yeah.
I mean, I did it at like for you, that's what, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. you can do it right on the bottom. I've done these before where I slid the flange to the bottom, and I used some of the bouquet wraps that they have. This has, when you wrap a bridal bouquet, there's a nice little thick, showy wraps that you put on there. And I just simply wired it onto it and let it hang straight down. So even though it's a choker, it still took out the V-neck of the dress. So that's a great option too. This has a lot of products that are great with multiple uses. You just kind of have to think about how you can use them. So I was talking, different areas differ. Some areas have little nosegays or little posies that some of the girls carry versus wrist corsages or things like that. And this is a little bling organic for you. But I just took the succulent because they have a beautiful array of succulents here. A little bit of the lacy leaf, Dusty Miller. And I taped it with just regular, like wet tape. Or you can use corsage tape, whatever you want to wrap it with. And then I had a question earlier about how I wrapped this off. How do you do it without getting glue on your ribbon and things like that? There's a couple of different ways that you can do it. I would recommend, I only have the thin, but I would recommend using the thicker tape for this, just because it covers the area a lot quicker. And I'll just show you on the bottom of this thin. But you just get it started, and then you flip it on itself. But you flip it on itself like this, and you just keep, you have to touch it again, touch it to itself just to keep it. That's why the thick is a little bit easier to do. But you just continue to wrap that down, and so that way you end up getting a sticky handle. And then when you start to put your double fake satin, it won't slide. It'll stick right where you want it to stay. And typically when I start one of these, I'll take the long piece of ribbon. I'll just use this for example. I take the long piece of ribbon and I leave me about that much. So I wrap all the way down, and then I flip it and I come back up. So I have another end like this, and I knot it at the top. You can push corsage pins in there just to make sure it holds. Or if you tie a bow or anything like that, I put this fancy little brooch on there. So when someone holds it on the front, you definitely see that. And it's a little focal to your bow. Just depends on how much focus you want to bring in this area versus on the top. But you can see when I made this, and one of the benefits of having the permanent is you can twist things and manipulate things. But I definitely made it a little more front facing than up at the top. And then I just glued one of the little accents right down into the center, just to pull it up, just to give a little sparkle. So whether it's a little nosegay that's going to the prom, or whether it's the mother of the bride, just something simple. They don't want to show up their daughters, they don't want to be the spotlight or the center of attention, but they definitely want to look like they have everything together, and they coordinate and things like that. So don't be afraid, even when you're selling weddings, that you take the time when it gets to that point. I don't do it in my initial consultation just because we get them in before they actually book with us to get their proposal. But once they do and you have a follow-up meeting and it gets a little closer, take the time to ask those questions. What does the dress look like? What are you carrying a purse? Are you wearing, what are your shoes? And because people want to be pulled together, they just probably don't know if you can do that or you even have that to offer. So anytime you get the opportunity to make some up, or you do make one and you take a picture of it, you put it on Facebook, you put it out there, they remember. Like they remember that you were the people who did it, or, oh, I saw, that Hot House did blah, blah, blah. That's the name of my store. So they remember, and that way, when it comes time for them to look fancy or them to dress up or go somewhere, then they know where to come. I have one little girl who, she is a very popular little girl, but she's been to several proms, and she's been to several different things. She goes to all the different high schools and things like that, and she has just an array of different dresses, and she was so excited when she picked her prom dress this time, coming up in a few weeks. It's all gold. The whole thing. It looks like a design. It looks like a Fitz design wrap in the gold sequin walking down the aisle, And I just thought, what am I going to do for this? But it's fun. And it's a little challenge, but she sent me the picture on Facebook, and she's like, be thinking, I need something. So, you know, she has come to know that there's different things on the marketplace, but not all the girls know are out there. So you definitely want to flip through the catalog and make sure what you want. And you don't, you know, if you do, like she talks about, bring people into your shop or go to the school and show them the different varieties. That way you already have it sold before you order it. You know, it's a really smart way. If you know that you sold 5 of these, there's no need to buy a dozen necessarily if you need 5 for this time. So you can keep up with your inventory that way. And I know that they have a great relationship with Fit, so if they don't have them in, I'm sure they can get them in and get it back stocked up for you with no problem. So you just definitely don't want to pre-sell something that you can't get. So, because once you sell them, you don't want to break the little heart and tell them you can't get it. So, just be careful with your checks and balances with that sort of thing. But I think a lot of these little tiaras are real underused, because I think people think about, you know, little princess pageants and things like that with little tiaras. But just the actual grid itself is a nice little working base to go from. So I showed you this method, and then we were talking about the U-glue strips. I don't know if many of you work with U-glue or not. You should. It's one of the best things since sliced bread.
It is. It's awesome.
Once you start, you get a little addicted. But it comes in 3 sizes, so it comes in the little bitty squares, which most of you are probably familiar with. It also comes in these, which are the strips, and then it comes on a roll, which is just a continuous roll of the sticky stuff. And I love these the best, because sometimes the square isn't enough to hold what I want it to. But when you cut this, you always end up getting a sticky, like it wants to pull apart if you've ever used it. The trick is to take your scissors and dip them in a cup of water and get them wet, and it'll cut it without it being sticky. So it's a great way to be able to cut those to whatever size you want. Now the trick here, so if you've never used it, it's double-sided sticky gum, you know, that pulls around, glue that pulls around. So it takes a little practice, so don't get discouraged, and I'll probably mess it up now I'm sitting here in front of you. But you just put it on like that, and you start to peel it off. And as you peel it, you want to stretch it. A lot of people don't know that it stretches. So that one piece can really take you all the way down the stem. So you don't have to put 5 pieces of this. You can just simply go all the way down and stretch it as far as you need to. And that way, you can start with that ribbon and go down and then come back up and do it that way. You just, for that double face satin, it's a little slippery, so you just want to make sure you have a little sticky to attach to as you go down so it holds in place for you. So there's a couple of different ways you can do those wraps all the way to the bottom. On boutonnieres and things like that, you can do a little bit of that U-glue and help it stick. But most of the time, I just take it, keep that little piece out, and then go down and then come back up, and I'll just tie it off. And usually it's pretty tight because it's that small. If you want to put a little U-glue on the back or a little bit of the wet glue just to get your initial wrap down, you can. But there's fancy wraps, there's ballet lace wraps, Fitz has a lot of extra little bling that you can put down the pieces. All the bouquet wraps that they use are beautiful. That's probably one of the top sellers or upsell that I do for bridal bouquets, because I price the bouquets out based upon the flower content of them. And then as we come into our final meetings, we talk about exactly how they want them wrapped and things like that. So it's definitely a nice little upsell. We do it with double face satin, that comes standard. But then those bouquet wraps are definitely an upsell. And you can charge a nice little piece for them. And also one thing, we have a lot of people who want to put brooches on certain things, and some of the brooches out there, the antique brooches and such, are really expensive. So Fitz is a great source for the inexpensive brooches. And they come in all different kinds. The cameo, there's a lot of different of the rhinestone styles. So definitely fun little costume jewelry that they can reuse afterwards. So I had one lady who actually wanted to use those for napkin rings. So we just ordered in, and that was her gift to the people afterwards, was the brooch. So she could do it economically